All right. It's nice coming back again to continue our fully exciting, study on creative writing. Now, today we are going to look at the place of what you really like to write in terms of the genre you feel most comfortable with. You see, it's not just a case that people are creative writers, often happen to be specialists in certain areas of strength in terms of expressing their creativity. And when we look at that kind of thing, we understand the fact that people really write the best when they are within their own special area of expression. And then along that line, you will have people that are prose writers, who enjoy storytelling, people who like to write poetry, people who like to write memoirs, and so on and so forth. And people who like to write even biographies or autobiography. Let me put it this way. You see, when we talk about creativity and we are talking about the genres of literature, like you have been getting familiar with on this channel, you discover that it's no more very comfortable to get confined with a three-headed, idea of literature as being fixed within prose, drama, and poetry. Well, maybe that was very, very important when that was coming up and was being circulated some centuries back. But now, because life itself is not static and societies are dynamic, their creativities definitely and their expressiveness are bound to have new ways of being, reflected. And today we can talk about several clear genres of literature. We can, for example, along the area of prose, we can say that we are not just within the area of prose fiction as the only important or necessary habitation of storytelling in the area of literary expression. But we can even talk about creative non-fictions. For example, things like some non-fictions like autobiographies, biographies, times memoirs and the like. You see, when they are put within some very impressive scales of language expression, we are going to discover that some very important writings that you may say is not literature because it is non-fictional might actually be really much of an expression of literature. Over here, we've talked about Malala Yousafzai's, I am Malala, and I have tried to draw our attention to a very interesting way in which that autobiography is very literary. See, and then we know that when we talk about genres like that, we are into literature. Now, today, we have several genres of literature. We can talk about digital literatures, for example. We can talk about internet literature, I dare tell us. We can talk about the Facebook, the Twitter, the blog, and so on and so forth as literal channels by which literature is expressed today. So we need to know where our strength lies. If you know that this is where your strengths lie, you might be very much comfortable with particular genres, like maybe you are very, fascinated to life writing, which will have to do with things like autobiography, encapsulate the memoir, biography, and all that. You might want to put your whole strength there and keep writing very, very impacting life narratives. You may also be somebody that is very adept to creative writing within prose fiction. You might be the type that enjoys writing the short story. You might like the novelette. You might like the novel. You might be a poet, and you might just be the kind of person that loves expressing yourself in drama and the like. What matters the most is that you've got to find where your strength lies the most, and then you develop it. It is very consistent with classical writers, people that get very canonized within history, that what you get to know them with is within a particular literary expression, maybe drama or poetry. Some might combine more than two. Some might be just within a particular stream, just like a poet, and that's all. Some might combine the novel and poetry. Some might be good in drama and poetry. Some might be all-rounders. It depends on how you see. Even when you're talking about all-rounders, there is always a way to find out that the major area of strength of a particular writer is actually here. In that area, find yours and invest your literary energies there. Make it something very clear, make it very consistent, and really work on it. Read people that have succeeded, canonical writers, classical writers, enviable artists that have excelled in this area, and go your full length into it. Put your full length into it. Now, having talked about that, I want to begin to go into the areas that have to do with the writing itself. The writing itself. Now, we have gone beyond, quite to some extent, beyond the pre-writing stages. But now we want to begin to encounter the business of writing itself. Now, how do we start out to write? You want to write a particular issue, you want to write a particular story, you want to write a particular subject matter and all that. How do you go about it? In whatever genre you want to put this within, how do you start up? Number one, you've got to get a riveting, an arresting title. The first thing you do in contemplating what you want to write, when you really want to put that into writing, is to devise a captivating title. A title that will be like a hook that draws the audience wonderfully along as they go on with what you set out to do. The title is a very important part of the text, the entire text, that does a number of things. Number one, it advertises the particular thing you are setting out, that is, the thing you are producing. It's a story, a poem, or a collection of poems, or dramatic piece. It advertises it. Number two, it sets it within a particular aspect by which the audience might make a brief conclusion, a brief analysis of what to expect. And that brief analysis will hinge on whether it's likely to be interesting or not. When a title is captivating, the next thing somebody wants to do is to know something about it. In most cases, they want to read the blog. What has been said about it? What have people said about it? The initial exercise of somebody picking a book or going online to know a little thing about what is there makes a lot of impact on the audience. And the way you start that out is with the title. The title is a kind of arresting field to a prospective audience. It arrests to what you are calling people to. I've told you it can be an advertisement mechanism. When it is arresting, it has advertised what you want to say. And when you follow it up with, we are coming to that, when you follow it up with a very, very page-turning thing that you do with what you write, then you are already on your way to visibility in the literary world. Now, arresting titles, how do they come? You see, arresting titles can be in many ways. It has to do with your creativity. The title can be a word. The word can be the name of somebody, historical figure, mythical figure. It could be the name of an ordinary person, a name you can find anywhere as you walk within a community. It can be the name of a thing or of an occurrence. It can be the name of an idea. It can be a label to talk about, you see, a philosophy. For example, imagine a story that has the title Harry. The next thing that comes to you is, what about Harry? You want to look at it because it is a suspense marker. It allows suspense to develop within the prospective reader. You want to see what Harry is all about. Or somebody writes Stevenson, or it is a familiar name within historical data or the mythic world of a particular people. For example, you have a name like Morimi. Morimi happens to be a goddess within the Yoruba cosmos, the Yoruba understanding of history. Although, you see, Morimi may be, and it's been put within history that she really existed, but there is a myth around her that makes her larger than the person she used to be historically. So when the people within that cultural space that know about Morimi see a novel or a collection of poems or, a particular cultural production with the title Morimi, you are likely to discover that people will be immediately drawn to it to see what is this all about. Now, when we talk about the area of a titling, we may also go beyond just a word. Well, let me finish with likely words that can be very interesting. Okay, for example, Shakespeare gave us single titles like Macbeth. Okay, and then you find some other people talking about Lord Stephen. Well, that's the name of a person. That's a name as well. We're going beyond a word. So you can have a kind of name within a word, within a phrase, within a clause. Even it can be a sentence. For example, what about this very interesting title, by Marlon James? That's a simple clausal formation. He calls it, in fact, without reading that title, I can remember several years ago, when I saw that title alone somewhere, maybe on the internet or somewhere, I was curious to know what that thing was all about. Even though there was no blog around it, there was no explanation, but just a novel by Marlon James, A Brief History of 7 Killings. I mean, you wonder, what an arresting title, A Brief History of 7 Killings. How does 7 killings arrive at becoming historical? That is the first thing that would just immediately rise you up to want to look for that. Now, the nuance of the titling, A Brief History of 7 Killings, okay, it makes one to want to go a little bit further, okay? Now, you hear about titles like Never Again, I Wish I Was Never Born, something like that, or A Day Called Disaster, okay? Or titles like A Queen That Was Not. So many things you can imagine that can be very, very arresting. So the title is very, very important. And I must tell you this, a title goes beyond just inviting you to read creative writing. No. A title is, like I said, it's an advertisement, potential. A title can draw immediate respect to what somebody has to say, but where it boomerangs is where the creative process fails. And this is what we are going to address very, very soon. So we've got to master titling. Titling is not just important in creative writing, it's important in almost anything you do with a cultural space. For example, or a human space to enlarge it. Even when you do critical writing, you are writing a paper, an academic paper, or you want to write a proposal, for acceptance within a fellowship or a grant and things of that nature, okay? And you want to arrest the imagination of the people that are going to assess you. The first thing that is going to either help or mar you is the title. If the title is riveting, you will discover that brains that want to explore what you want to do will be immediately drawn to it. That, okay, a title like, well, don't let me go into the academic, because that's not our focus here. But then check it out. Where if you have been meeting academic titles or books that, that command immediate respect, in your area of specialization, whatever the case may be, ask yourself what immediately draws your attention in the first instance. It's the title. So your title is very, very important in making your product, which is what you want to write, very, very acceptable and definitely, marketable. Now, let's go into some other things. Broadly, we have the prose fiction, we have the prose narrative, which can consist of the fictional and the non-fictional, and even the fictional can be broken into subgenres. We have perhaps settled conventionally. Now we have the short story, we have the novelette, we have the novel, we have the blockbuster, and so on and so forth. But I dare tell you, we have more narratives today. We can talk about the blog. When you are writing a blog, you know that you are even dealing with a transnational. You really don't always know your audience. You can only imagine them. Now, when you are writing a blog, you have to know how to arrive at something that is immediately captivating, something that is enduring, something that can cause suspense, something that can make people want more. You've got to be able to do that. Now, let's put it for our own purpose in these lectures. Let us look at prose, drama, and poetry as broad genres that we might be able to put occurrences of their types within as we go on. Now, let's start with prose. Let's talk about, in the first instance, let's start with the non-fictional prose, the creative non-fiction. Let's say the autobiography, the biography, the memoir, to a great extent, and so on and so forth. How do we happen on writing a very, very arresting prose narrative, whether fictional or not? After coming up with a very interesting title, definitely a very serious prose writer will want to have a kind of plan of what you want to say, how you want to say it, and how far you want to go in saying what you want to say. What you want to say, how you want to say it, and the length, how far you want to go. Let's imagine that you are dealing with the non-fiction like the autobiography. You are going to do some things that will be very, very strategic, that will call attention to people and make them very, very much glued to what you are writing. This will continue in the next class. Please make sure you subscribe, make sure you like this, and make sure this is shared. Thank you very much.